we communicated by text a week or two ago, you said that you thought you might have a genuine chance of becoming the mayor of Greymouth. So
that's right. I'm throwing everything at it. Yeah.
You've got to balance two things, haven't you, in your candidacy for mayor? On the one hand, you've got actual responsibilities to the actual people living there right now today, right?
Yep.
And on the other hand, you've also got a larger responsibility to the RBE movement, because this is a stepping stone, this is a springboard to greater publicity, greater notoriety, greater ability to speak about it in public where people will listen, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to balance these two things. So to what extent, no, let me slightly rephrase that. How seriously are you taking the first part of that, your mayoral duties to the citizens of your town?
Yeah, okay. I've known quite a few mayors, and with the greatest respect, to a large degree, is a ceremonial role.
Right.
They don't actually have that much executive authority.
So you're not like the chairman of the board of the council kind of thing?
Yes, you are, but you're only the chairman, and you don't have a special casting vote. You have the same validity vote as the other councillors, who are all elected, who are most definitely well-embedded locals.
And you don't have any influence in tabling the contents of what's being discussed?
Yeah, you do, but at the end of the day, it's, especially here, it's extremely transparent. People are very interested in council activities here. I'd say much more so in the UK. Again, everybody knows everybody. It's all much more local, much more familiar with everybody. And so the mayoral role, there's not.
So it's not like an American mayor where, you're allocating the resources to your police department and schools and so on. You're
not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
So should you win, you would actually be able to concentrate primarily on role number 2 then, i.e. using it as a platform to publicise RBE to a wider audience.
Yeah. Well, of course, we've got the Money-Free Party, and we've got general elections in 2020. So that may be a point of contention for me. If I am mayor, do I drop the mayoralty to become a member of parliament?
Well, only if you win, right? You wouldn't have to drop it just to run, would you? Or would you? Would you have to drop it just to run?
No, you don't have to drop it to run, but if you win, you do. And then there'd have to be a by-election, which are expensive and time-consuming and just annoying. And of course, it's happened quite a few times. The locals, well, in instances that I've seen in the past, and I guess everyone is different, the locals have been really pissed off at being abandoned by the person who voted in. I completely
understand that. Yeah.
Oh, so he's pursuing his own ambitions.
Absolutely. You never gave a shit about us. Yeah. I get that. Yeah.
On the other hand, if you have the people behind you, then it might be say, go on, go for it. It's only ceremonial. We can just get another mayor. You go on and all the way, son. So it probably depends on how things are going at the time. Just to finish off the question, yeah, there are plenty of mayoral duties, cutting ribbons, kissing babies, that kind of thing. But the way I see it, because I do like to keep things succinct if possible, believe it or not, the council machine is a big, cumbersome one of many wheels turning very slowly. And the position of mayor really is just part of that machine. What you do have is the ability to direct that machine. So with the right vision, one can point the machine in the right direction. But we're not going to become a money-free town overnight.
Yeah, but you do so by bringing people along with you, right? Not by telling them this is what we're doing, but by convincing them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is how it should be.
The general infrastructure in Greymouth is all struggling as well. I mean, that's nationwide. And I think in the UK too, actually, underwater pipes, sewage, tubes, etc. are,
So what, as mayor, would you hope to do about this crumbling infrastructure? I mean, what would you, as mayor, as an advocate / mayor, be able to bring to the table to solve these problems?
Okay, 2 answers. And this is where it's absolutely imperative to have the people on board. And depending on how on board they are, depends on which road we'll travel. And I guess it'll probably end up being a combination of both. But one is, if the people are really behind me, and if we've had the RBE conversation with enough people, there are two things we could do. We can either go money free straight away and fuck it, and then, because the revolutionaries are not just the hippies in the woods, and we won't wait for central government to provide the money. We'll just go and fucking do it. And there's already a history of that. There's 3 mayors on the coast. Mine is by far the biggest one, but the most southern one, Bruce Smith, is under censure at the moment by the council overseers, because he and a mate, when some flood remedial work needed to be done in a hurry, they just went out with their diggers and their fucking great big trucks. His mate is like 80 and he owns a big construction company, and they just went out and they just fucking did it. Of course, subsequently there was a bill of $1.5 million for the council, which they then freaked out about because they hadn't gone through the transparency 10-year bollocks procedures. But this is the nature of these people, you know. And because, again, you know, I said everybody throughout the food chain has been touched by tragedy. They're not of a mind to just wait for central government to come up with some funding. So from this day forward, and we have a lot of meetings first, but from this day forward, we just will not pay our mortgages, rent, rates, electricity, etc. And what are they actually going to do? Because all the banking here is Australian owned, basically. Is the Australian Savings Bank going to come here and repossess 10,000 fucking shacks in the middle of nowhere? What are you going to do? You know,
I don't know about the utilities, but the mortgages, definitely. I love it with the mortgages. And while you're at it, you could make that argument that was made in the Zeitgeist movie, the second one, I think it was, that all mortgages are illegal contracts. They are all, every single last one of them, fraudulent contracts.
Yeah, that's right. We might even do it through the courts.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, at the very least, you can make a splash in the papers about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I like that. But I tell you what, I like the first idea the best, going full RBE straight away. I like it. Right, this is the shit he's doing. We've got the skill base, we've got the equipment, whatever. You know, between us, we've got it. Let's figure it out, man.
Yeah.
You're in charge of doing that. You're in charge of doing that. You're in charge of doing that. Crack on.
Yeah, and if you don't do it, it's your reputation, mate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And half the beneficiaries are your family. So
absolutely.
Go and get the fucking digger.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I'm
a big admirer of yours, Richard. You've been fighting a good fight for a while now, and you never seem to lose your appetite for it. You never seem to lose your motivation. It's very impressive.
It's funny how often I say this, but you know, one catches up with lots of different people not that often, and every time I'm fascinated by the rhetoric that comes from conversation rather than from deliberate study or sort of methodical development, just because most of my work is talking to people, and I'm amazed at what comes out. And so I love sort of unscripted conversations where we just kind of see how we get on, and that's when the good stuff comes out. And fortunately, much of my work in Greymouth is based around having conversations on the street with ordinary people. It's not high tech, it's not high leverage, it's just sort of face to face, one on one, or one on a small group of very organic conversation. And I think that's where the good stuff is. You know, it's not planned, it's not intended, it's just see what comes out. And I think there's a subconscious element to that, you know, where your subconscious brain is 90% of your brain capacity or something, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, more, I believe, but yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And if you can access that material, then you'll do a much better job, I think, on the whole.
Well, the thing is, we do access that material all the time, but because we're so convinced that all there is to us is our conscious, you know, our waking consciousness, our reason, you know what I mean? Because we're convinced that's all there is. We don't pay attention to our intuitions and our feelings and our gut reactions and stuff like that. And that's what those things are. That's our subconscious, which has access to all of that additional data. It's sending you a message saying, don't do that, don't do that. Right? You feel it in your gut. Hang on, something's wrong here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I watched a great Gabor Mate lecture the other day where he said exactly that, and how frequently they are in conflict.
Yeah.
And he asked the audience, you know, raise your hand if you've ever had a gut feeling and gone against it and later regretted it.
Oh, God. Who can't put their hand up to that? Jesus.
And conversely, how many people have got a gut feeling, gone with it and regretted it, and hardly any hands out? What I frequently find myself saying to people is, oh, how's it going? Haven't seen you for ages, Richard. And with utter sincerity, I frequently say, do you know what? I think it's going better than ever. I'm more positive. Sorry, this is in answer to your question. You know, you seem to keep going, but I'm constantly refreshed and sort of goaded on by the positive results that we're seeing, and so it gets better and better actually. And I'm more positive and more optimistic now than I've ever been, you know, in the last 10 years. And I've been up there plenty of times, but it's an ever ascending pathway. You know, we just seem to get closer and closer to what we all aspire to. Of course, the poor politicians, etc., of today have this ridiculous balancing act that in the resource-based economy world we do not have to play anymore. You just tell the truth and the science will guide you as to the correct response. It's not even difficult. And I was astounded. The very first public outing I made at a mayoral level when I was contesting the Nelson mayoralty in 2013, and I had a lovely prepared speech, and the mayor candidate's got 5 minutes, and we had 450 people in the audience. I mean, I was shitting myself, but this is great. Right, I'm going to talk about Spaceship Earth and how it's going to work in a resource-based economy. And I discovered, I mean, it's amazing how you can lose and win in the same few minutes, but I discovered that scripted speeches with this kind of material do not work. We're not teaching people anything new. We're de-brainwashing them. And so everyone's got their own custom brainwash, and you've got to look them in the eye and have a conversation of some sort and figure out, where are you stuck with this? What's your personal hang-up with what I'm proposing? Because everyone's got a different version. So my scripted speech was rubbish. But when it came to the questions and answers, this big audience had a lot of questions about healthcare, about violence, about alcohol in society, about jobs, pollution. I realized that I had the easiest job of all. And although I was by far the least experienced of the 4 candidates for the mayoralty, I was able to genuinely put my hand up for every single question from the audience immediately without even having to think. When you start thinking in money-free terms, suddenly every problem we've got becomes easily soluble.
You're free to think. You're free to think in terms of, like Jack Fresco said, you're free to think in terms of, do we have the technology? Do we have the resources? Do we have the manpower? Yes, right, let's do it.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. Yeah, it's not. Is this interest going to be upset? Are they going to let us do it? Are we going to be able to borrow money? Can we finance it? Can we issue the bonds? Blah 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 blah. All of that gone. Advocates of money, however, would say that the necessity to raise finance for a project is a effective barrier to bad projects not being undertaken.
I would say, I guess you're right to a degree, in that the money filters out the crap projects. It makes money, in which case shit will happen anyway.
Well, that's the thing. The definition of what shit means now changes to what will or will not make money. No, absolutely right.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the resource-based economy, because now you've got a self-referencing automated process whereby the technology assists in the project, so no one has to mix concrete by hand, no one has to dig holes, no one has to hammer nails in anymore. We've got amazing technology to do that, so that's all easy. If we want to do something, do it easily. But you're still going to need buy-in. I have to look for a better word. The investment, still need a better word. This money thing goes deep. You still need the involvement of the humans to make it actually happen. You still need
cooperation. You still need the ability for people to collaborate and cooperate on a large scale. I mean, they're still going to need to build things like bridges and tunnels.
And hospitals, absolutely.
Ways and hospitals and, well, maybe not airports, but, the
power plants, roads.
Whatever it might be. There are large-scale projects which still need to be undertaken and which affect people over a large area, you know what I mean, and benefit people over a large area, but then there are also people it doesn't affect and doesn't benefit. And so I mean, this is where I get a little bit confused, and this is where I personally, maybe I'm just not smart enough to see it, I personally have a problem with detailed transition plans, because from my knowledge of physics, particularly chaotic systems, transition from one equilibrium state to a different equilibrium state is not possible without a highly chaotic, turbulent in-between phase. And so I kind of feel that the path to RBE, or something similar to it, something that embraces those philosophies, is most likely going to end up not being anything that anyone has thought of yet. You know what I mean? It's something that will emerge from the collective when there are enough people working on the various problems that we're going to encounter. And you know what I mean? Something will emerge that, as of yet, we have no idea what it looks like.
No, it does take some imagineering, doesn't it? And as Colin would put, actually, Colin Turner from Free World Charter, who I know, I saw your interview, he as he beautifully, so eloquently put, to really get this, you have to suspend your disbelief on several levels at the same time. And it takes quite a lot of mental, certainly energy to bring that about. But I would say have faith. So I'll backtrack slightly to an interview I did here actually in 2012 on my birthday, bizarrely, with a very wise reporter from a newspaper. And they did a big article and on the money-free proposal. And she really liked it, and I was really thrilled, to get that much. I got a big chunk of the newspaper. It was fantastic. My first decent outing in the press, really. And she liked the idea, but she said, I think it's going to take a massive catastrophe, Richard, to bring this about. And that bugged me. I mean, this is 7 years ago. It's been itching away at me for years. When I started working on the West Coast, which is a very, very different region to the rest of the country, I realized that this major catastrophe that people, I think she was right, had to go through to realize that something's really got to change, and it may be us that has to change it. That major catastrophe actually doesn't necessarily need to be shared at the same time. So it may not be a 9/11 or a Christchurch mosque shooting. It may be the fact that your daughter took her own life, or your mother died of cancer, or your business collapsed and you lost your home. That is your 9/11. That's your personal catastrophe. And because of the West Coast's precarious history and position in loads of different terms, nearly everybody there has been touched by tragedy in some way, whether it's a flood. There's a lot of social problems there, a lot of economic challenges, and a lot of climate change challenges. And they're very isolated, and they know all about tragedy. We had a horrific mining accident 8 years ago. 29 guys died in 2010. And, that shouldn't really happen in 21st century mining in a first world country. I mean, it shouldn't happen anywhere, but, that's unprecedented in the modern era to have things like that. And it always happens on the West Coast. So these people have been through that massive transformative experience and thus are ready for change. And I've never said this before, don't you think that chaos, because we are precipitating a change of mentality, nothing else, we just have to change our perspective. That chaotic period is actually where many people are now, and some of us have been through it earlier than others with our midlife crises.
We could be in that chaotic period right now, and I think actually you make a very good point. That could be exactly what the explanation is, that we are in that right now, and which is why
feels like it, doesn't it?
But that's Trump, that's Brexit, that's the rise of the far right. You know what I mean? That's the complete disorganization on the left, bad political correctness and identity politics everywhere. Do you know what I mean? The inability of governments to respond to even the most basic needs of their people anymore.
The example I use at the moment, if say that the breadwinner in a household drives a truck for Coca-Cola, okay, those big red trucks, and they carry around 50 tons of Coke, and they deliver it to supermarkets and towns all over the country. And everyone in the family, in fact everyone in the country, knows that those kind of drinks aren't very good for us. But because of the money thing, everybody right down the food chain, in our local dairy, there's 19 Coca-Cola signs, just a little country dairy in Wakefield. So it's very, very well promoted. Although nobody really wants their children to have it, but nevertheless,
they all do. Well, not all, but most do. Yeah.
And of course, right down to the manufacturing and delivery, you know, the person that drives that truck, they get paid to do that, and they can thus provide for their family. Thank you, mummy or daddy. That's how we get the things we need. So we kind of, oh, well, yeah, we wouldn't drink it, but that's, you got to do a job, you know, fair enough. But after money, now the family and the community and the support structure of that truck driver, who he currently supports with his local contribution because of the money that he gets from his job, he doesn't need that money anymore because everything that he used to buy with it is now supplied for free. So what's the point in going? Is he going to go as a volunteer when A, it's taking him away from his family and his community where he's really wanted as a human being, and B, they collectively know that what he's doing is actually detrimental to society's health as a whole. And they don't need the truck, they don't need to go away, and no one has rotten teeth anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But if suddenly he gets a call and let's say Westport has had an earthquake and they need food, they need blankets, they need relief goods and machinery because of their disastrous situation, will that truck driver get the support of his community, his family, his society?
Yeah.
Of course he will. And we've seen evidence of this with the disasters that happen here every few months. This is still a pretty
there's a saying, I can't remember who it is, there's a saying that when things go really, really, really badly, we revert to communism. Because it's the only thing that actually works.
Yeah, quite brilliant. Yeah, and the Christchurch earthquakes proved that enormously. I mean, the government completely, oh my God, what do we do? And we end up with a farming army, they're called, because the farmers have got big machinery, tractors, trailers, food stores, equipment. And they just, all these farmers got together, or have a quick ring round. Of course, they're all related. They all know each other. It's a very, it's a tiny country. And they got together with the gear that they needed to actually help those people out. And then about the same time, the student army, there's a couple of universities in Christchurch, which, after the earthquake, there was no classes. The kids, well, what do we do? Oh, well, let's go and help these people. And together with the farmers on all their equipment, they basically took over the city. It was incredible. And they went door to door. The place is covered in mud and there's all these houses falling down and no electricity, water all over the place. These kids went door to door. All right, love, what do you need? Oi, we're going to need a tractor over here to lift this. She's going to need some food. She's got a baby coming. And they sorted it all out. And it's an amazing, and again, a very visible and recent demonstration of what people do if you let them, And
that's a really nice story. I wasn't aware of that. That's a really, really nice story.
Yeah, and everybody remembers it like it was yesterday.
Of course they do. It's a proper human. It's a proper human, uplifting story, isn't it? I like to think that that's how we behave most of the time, given the opportunity to do so. Do you know what I mean? That's how I like. It's not something you can prove, but that's what I like to believe. That's my article of faith, if you like.
Yeah. And that's also part of my chaos interim segment, whereby you'll get little opportunities to dart forward into the future. Oh, what's RBE going to be like? Oh, well, hang on. In 2010, 2011, we experienced it, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I mean, the volunteering here is astounding. If you chair a bloody school committee in England, you get a fucking gong for it, don't you? Whereas here, everybody's doing something like that all the time. And the ambulance service, St. John's Ambulance, I mean, it's the ambulance service is 75% voluntary here, as is the fire service. And so people know about volunteering already. And then if it's quite easy just to extend that. So why don't we make your job voluntary? And then people have to think, well, what do I do? Does it contribute anything? And another great thing about, and only 27% of all work done in this country is just managing money. So that they don't actually produce anything tangible whatsoever, nothing. So advertising, marketing, sales, banking, investment, accountancy, they're just juggling numbers, and those people can instantly retire. So when what can I do? I can retire. Oh. And of course, you can retire with all the accoutrements that you gained through your endeavors previously because you didn't contribute towards the manufacture of boats or holiday houses
Food
or
or
sports
whatever. Yeah.
furniture. You had no part in their construction because that was all done by people who actually produce things and, of course, machines. So you can continue to enjoy your luxury lifestyle, but just please don't go to the office and predate upon everybody else anymore. Because in fact,
So you'll be making a massive contribution just by stopping doing that.
Yeah, just go on fucking holiday. You know? Don't sell my kids any more fucking shit. You know, incredible. And because it gets better. This is the fantastic thing about RBE. When you start to think about it, oh my God, it's even better than I thought. Those people, and we all went to school. Well, there weren't many at my school, but we grew up with them. You know, which kids at college and things were the ones that got into finance and banking and investment? They were the proactive, hardworking, motivated, intelligent, driven people, and they still are. And they do things that are ostensibly successful because it produces great fruits for them. There's nothing, you know, nothing wrong with aspiring to that. But once we retire those people, they're not just going to sit around and do nothing.
No, that's right.
What do they do at weekends? They do fucking social work and community restoration and environmental projects, don't they? They do those now. What are they going to do when they're free with their networks? God, the other day I've got a great relationship with my accountant, Sari, and she's been basically on board, which is pretty amazing for an accountant for, nearly 10 years. I mean, what are we going to, because they're so hardworking, these people, they're so proactive. And I think they're going to be a massive part of this because the accountants know everybody. The same accountant, the same person can be an accountant for an environmental group, a church, a school, a village organization. The government even has accountants, you know, a business, a marketing company, you know, all these things, they all associate through the same accountant frequently at top level, you know, at principal level in the organization. So flip over to the non-money world. Now we're freeing them up to use their networks. So when we have let's say we need a new sewage system in our remote village, I'll go to my accountant, not to say where can I get the money, but where can I get the resources to fix the sewage system.
Who do you know? Yeah, that's right. Who do you know who deals with concrete or whatever? Yeah.
Who's got the science? Who's got the diggers? Who's got the pipes? That kind of thing. And these people know everybody.
Interesting to hear you talk about, because I think a lot of people in the Zeitgeist movement and the Venus Project and perhaps in the RBE movement in general see money as an evil, and by extension, at least to a degree, anyone who works in the field of money as being evil. So it's really nice. No, but it's really nice to see you thinking that actually they've got a very valuable, real contribution to make. And you're quite right to say that in many cases they are actually the best and the brightest of us who go into these fields, and that we would do well to harness that, to harness those energies and skills and intelligence for better end. No, absolutely. No, so that's really nice to hear. I can understand why you are so successful at this, because you look to find the best, you know, you look to find the best in people, don't you? You look to see everyone as an asset rather than an enemy.
It's so rewarding, you know, because it's sort of win-win, you know, you can't really go wrong with that. Yeah, it seems to, every conversation seems to be positively contributing, you know, rather than goodies and baddies, friends and enemies, you know, and it probably is a bit naive, but I do see everybody as just victims of this system, you know, and we've all become horribly corrupted by it. And especially again, on the West Coast, where everyone has such a recent or relevant experience of tragedy, their humanity is that much closer to the surface. And you really don't have to talk to somebody, especially if you are sincere and impassioned, you don't have to talk to people for very long before they say, yeah, you're right, mate, we've got to do something. You know? Whereas in much of the rest of the country where I've done a lot of my sort of street work, it's frequently, the people still think they're going to be okay. They're still, oh no, we're going to make it. Oh, my daughter's doing great at university. My son's got another business, and, you know, and they won't go there. You know, the cognitive dissonance is too strong to dare to penetrate
I
into the
was
real
making this point in the conversation I had with Nick the other day, that for a lot of people, I see it a lot in the UK, that kind of person where, you know, they've got a lot invested in their lives today. They've got kids, they've got a career, they've got a mortgage, they've got responsibilities, they've got a family, they've got a network of friends, they've got membership of the club, blah, 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 you know.
Yeah.
RBE is a long way from that. It's a really, really, really radical shift of perspective. Exactly what you said before. That's fundamentally what it is a shift of perspective. And once you've made it, you look back and think, wow, that was really fucking easy. But from the other side of it, it's not like that, right? It's yeah. So we do need to be infinitely patient and compassionate with those who are, as you say, victims of. Yeah, they're traumatized, aren't they?
Yes,
but yeah.
It's proto-traumatic stress disorder.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I mean,
We are
you mentioned
currently
Gabor Maté
immersed.
earlier on. I'm a massive fan of his as well. He's all about trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're in it now. It's not post-traumatic. It's now.
Yeah.
You know? So no wonder you can't get their attention, because they're fucking in a bunker dodging bullets. You know,
Yeah.
so they're not going to listen to a lovely concept.
Being re-traumatized every day. I mean, it's not like it's trauma in the past and it's over and you can try and deal with it. It's reinforcing all the time, every day.
Yeah. If New Zealand went money-free in September 2020, which is still my kind of favoured date, actually, for this taking place.
You actually think it could happen as soon as that?
I do, and everything all my experience, and I don't do much else, reinforces that. You know, my background is in big aviation and engineering and aircraft operations, and we do a lot of trend plotting using graphs and mathematical models to try and predict the future. So we're trend plotting, and what we've been doing with both, I'm going to layer up some graphs now. When you're plotting trends of social breakdown, mental health challenges, environmental challenges, all the things that are going wrong in the world, and if you also at the same time plot the growing awareness of solutions, then you see that they start to coincide at a point in the future. And absolutely, they're exponential. And anytime you get near anything exponential, it gets really exciting really quickly.
Yeah.
And it's very, very important that we don't use historical precedent to predict future rate of change. You said, and it was intriguing actually, you said there needs to be a period of chaos between the money world and the no money world. But of course, we're grey creatures, aren't we? And so we already have a lot of experience and activity in the no money world anyway.
Yeah.
Because we don't charge our dog, you know, we don't charge our family for toilet paper. We do a lot of volunteer work in the community. If someone falls over in the street, we just help them. We go to libraries. We don't own shopping trolleys. We just use them and we take them back. We hire cars. We hire hotel rooms. You know, we're actually quite used to a sharing type economy and environment. And in fact, it's not as alien as it seems. And I don't think it'll be in fact, I said this a long time ago, I think that the transformation will be unopposed and it will be almost effortless, actually, and we'll just ease into it overnight. And again, we've got to be very careful using historical precedent of change to predict future change. Everything's different in the 21st century, and you know, a revolution can be, I think, in fact, Jacques Fresco said, a revolution of consciousness. But if that happens, then Australia, you know, our nearest neighbour, won't have waited in the 19th century to see what happens. And of course, the rest of the world is so intimately connected that when a positive change, or indeed a negative one, takes place in one place, because of that technology, it can be spread around the world very quickly.
Yeah.
Just give you a quick example of, you know, talking about climate vulnerability, let's say. Everybody on the planet, certainly anybody of anything like any sort of influence, now is aware of climate vulnerability. All 8 billion people. And that news has traveled around the world in, you know, probably half of our lifetimes or less.
Yeah.
It's gone all around the world. And that's some of the worst news that humanity has ever had. Whereas the prospects of a resource-based economy is probably the best news that humanity has ever had in all of eternity. So how long is that going to take to get around the world? And I can't see the Australians saying, no, we like our capitalism. It's all great over here. In New Zealand, they've suddenly leapt into a 21st century utopian paradise, like overnight, and they've solved their climate problems, their health problems, their animal welfare, their mental health. They've solved them overnight. Should we do that? You know?
Extinction Rebellion, have they made it over there?
Yep. Oh, not physically, but certainly, you know, over the internet. Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
I mean,
okay.
have they got a decent kind of target, or are they just a bit like Occupy?
Their target is anthropomorphic climate change. So they blocked up various different routes in central London with placards and boats and various different stuff. They glued themselves to the front of the stock exchange.
But I immediately pounce on people and say, I don't really want to talk about climate change, and we don't even need to. It's not really relevant at this stage. You know, did man cause this, etc. At the end of the day, you know, just if you're in a spaceship, don't burn the rubbish, you know, in amongst the air that you're going to breathe. And that's all that really matters. There's plenty of other reasons not to do things that may or may not cause climate harm. And they're all driven by money at the end of the day. And I always feel these arguments, you know, we immediately kind of get onto a anti-poisons or anti-abortion or climate change argument, and we've already lost the point. And we can argue and fall out about it and send each other emails and build websites about it, go on protests. We've already missed the point. You know, Jacinda and co are all in Paris patting each other on the back about what they're going to do about the evils of Facebook.
Yeah.
And they've already missed the point, you know. And all that energy, all that angst and dedication will go into something that's actually a symptom and not a cause.
I was just going to use exactly that word. It's attacking symptoms, not causes. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All of it. And yeah, I mean, climate change is just the latest one. I tend to agree with you. If we didn't do things so fucking stupidly and wastefully, then we wouldn't be having to worry about these things, you know.
What I've really been up against in the last 10 years is the sort of naysayers who've got this position that, oh, it's all fine, you just need to work harder, you know. And the anomalies that we witness overseas aren't really real. That's just something that happens in these funny places where they're all fucked up. Yeah. But it doesn't happen here. And when these things start to happen here, then the few, and it's amazing, I said few, the remaining naysayers who think that it's all going to be fine and we can start exporting coal again and we can still expand dairy and sell more wine and we're going to create jobs and we're going to have green technologies and green tourism and, you know, everything's okay. That relatively small now proportion of the population is feeling increasingly isolated now that there's been, you know, 50 people shot in one incident. Instead of in New Zealand, it gets quite easy to back up. You know, we need to get people to think beyond the superficial, there's been a shooting, ban guns reaction. Yeah. And ask, you know, okay, just stop a minute, back up and think, well, why did the guy want to shoot anyone in the first place? Yeah. Why do we have threats to our climate? Why do people hunt whales? Why do people beat their wives, you know? Don't just have better surveillance in houses to prevent, you know, to catch them when they do beat their wives. We're so reactive. It's almost it's worse than childlike, actually. But here it's very, very obvious because there's so few people and they're so intimately connected, especially on the West Coast where, you know, my campaign is going on. And I think there's a much shorter link between the cause and the effect of what people are doing. Whereas I dare say in Britain or Spain or something, you know, a bigger, more developed, deeper civilization, shall we say, people are much more disconnected from the root causes of their problems that they experience. Whereas here they're very direct. So here we see dairy farming, which is our biggest export, and that props everything up, basically, the sale of basically milk powder overseas. That pays for basically everything. That's the short version. But it's disastrous for the animals, for the farmers, and for the environment and the water. And people see that very clearly. And so if we want to address those harm things that we see, that you can't eat the food in the water, you can't access farms anymore because they're all like electrified prisons, because they're huge corporate owned now, most of these dairy farms. They're not family friendly farms that they used to be. And the depression and the isolation of the farmers and their staff is horrific. The suicide rate amongst farmers is amongst the worst in the country. And they're all going into debt horrifically. And of course, the product that it produces isn't even really intended, in natural terms, for human consumption anyway. So the whole thing is flawed from start to finish. But it's very easy to point out here, because we're a relatively shallow civilization, in that regard, that dairy actually serves no intrinsic purpose except to get money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't actually contribute towards the manufacture of computers or electricity or food or dog leads, they're completely separate. And if we didn't do dairy, the land, and of course it's all the best land in this country, could basically revert back to wilderness, because we don't need it. The food that New Zealand exports is extremely expensive. I mean, even Kiwis can't afford it, so the Bangladeshis definitely don't get any of it. It's very high end, very high margin niche products for rich people, not for hungry people. And so the actual, and this is difficult for Kiwis sometimes, the actual produce of New Zealand serves no genuine purpose on the world table. It's only for rich people.
It's just to bring money into. Just playing devil's advocate here. I mean, obviously, I'm on the same team as you, right? But just for the sake of playing devil's advocate, to what extent does the money that these trades generate and bring into the country allow New Zealanders to buy goods from overseas that they might not otherwise be able to acquire?
Entirely, yeah. That's the only way we can do that. And that's once people get to that stage, I tend to, especially on a first conversation, I tend to leave them alone, because it's if you've got that far, then you're well on the road to seeing that we're going to be better off without this money thing. So, and it's a funny question, actually. I really always enjoy it. What about our imports and exports? And there's actually about 8 different answers to that question. And this is where the face-to-face conversation is so important, because if you're talking to an older person, we'll say, well, look, in the 1950s, when you came over, or when you were growing up, we didn't have imports at all. We had Morris Miners came on a boat every 8 weeks, and if you were very wealthy, you could afford one. But in fact, we made everything that we need here. How bad was it? But it's funny, when you really talk to people, they're not even that sure if we want it anyway. Again, especially on the West Coast, where
they don't want their phones and their laptops.
Well, there's a lot of pushback, because it's not brought anything tangible, and it's not brought anything good. And most people think, or frequently I get, it was better off before we had them. At least you could talk to people. They weren't looking down at their screens.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I have some sympathy for that view, but I'm not sure that that's going to fly on a global scale, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
They're pretty attached to their devices, And anyway, the laptops and phones, much as there's many awful things about them, particularly in the social media sphere, I mean, these things also have the capacity to be incredibly powerful tools for good, right? For education, for information, for connectivity. You know what I mean? They can be incredibly powerful tools for the elevation of the spirit of man. They don't have to be destructive. I mean, I agree, they largely are right now, but that's a fault of the way we use them, not of the technology itself.
Yeah. Yes, and I would say a leveraging of the negative aspects of our current system.
Yeah, exactly. It's in their interest, exactly, to have us jump every time a little message comes through, because it might, it might be selling us something we want, or at least it's something that they can convince us that we want.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's two ways of thinking about that. A third way is back in 1893, when New Zealand adopted enfranchisement, voting for women, they didn't worry about what the Saudis would make of it.
Yeah.
They thought it was the right thing to do. This probably is the leading edge of human civilization here, this place. And so what we do may seem a bit out there to, how should we say, less civilized countries, but it may well be the right thing. But we shouldn't wait for their approval before we do it. And so this is like a spearhead of progress, and there will be unanswered questions, but in the short term, we can manage without brand new iPhones. It's one of the things that makes this country, excuse me, sort of great and pivotal actually in what we're doing, and why I think we're going to succeed in becoming the first money-free country, because of the original aspirations of the first settlers. And I don't mean the whalers and the seal hunters. I mean the wealthy, educated and aspirational British, mostly, that came in so the late 19th century. They weren't economic refugees. They weren't fleeing terror or persecution. They were looking for a better life in the new world. And they were starting to have second thoughts about the colonial imperial march of British aspirations across the world, at gunpoint. It was definitely different when they came to New Zealand. And much of it was to escape the hierarchy and the class divisions that were prevalent in 19th century England. Mm. So we have a few things like the quarter-acre plots. No one could build a house on a site that was smaller than a quarter of an acre, which is enough to have a pig and a few chooks and grow a few fruit trees, kind of thing. And there's still, of course, they've all been built. There's now 31 A, B, C, and D on every bloody plot, in the towns. But that was the aspiration, so that everyone could be self-sufficient. And also the things like access to the countryside and the waterways, particularly. There's a thing called the Queen's Chain, which means basically anybody can go anywhere within a chain, a cricket field length of any named waterway centre. So even when you're just driving around the countryside, if there's a little creek, if it's got a name, then you're allowed to go into that creek and hunt and fish and camp there, gather firewood, and that's all over the country. And they fiercely defend that right. And that's very, very important to New Zealanders to retain those freedoms of access. And it's pioneer country, really. They're very resourceful. One of the things that's it's another one of these disparities. These people have enormous capability. They're miners, farmers, sailors. They can do anything, and yet they're fucked because of this system from outside.
Yeah.
They can't even provide for their own family now, despite being capable of doing anything. They can't even provide for their family because of this fucking system that says you have to have the special tokens, never mind all the diggers or the fuel or the chainsaws or the... No. If you haven't got the tokens, the family starve, and the wife leaves and the kids are on fucking drugs. And that has already happened, so they're hurting like mad because of this, And when I was I've been at work the last couple of days doing mechanic work, and I tend to wear the same clothes all the time. But on the coast, they are especially anti-experts from outside in suits.
It sounds to me like I'd like these West Coast folk.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, they're good, solid, fucking handshake people.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really are. I love going there. It's fantastic. It's such a boost, to come. Every conversation I come away, again, further up the scale of holy fucking shit, we're going to do this, And thus I'm throwing everything at it's funny, a sort of dilemma between recruiting RBE supporters and recruiting voters.
Is it not kind of the same thing or not? How do they differ, those two things?
Well, it depends how long you've got, because I wouldn't want to go in the newspaper, for example, and have two column inches explaining this fucking communist anarchist hippie from outside fancies being mayor, because they wouldn't put the material across in a way that was palatable to most people. Whereas if I can have a conversation with those people, then I can guarantee their vote. But, you know, touch wood, basically. But it's got to be the right conversation. And it may be as little as, oh my God, what a lovely dog. You know, hello, what's his name? Or it may be 20 minutes of profound anarchism, you know, having a proper chat. But it's got to be measured, and it's very, very personal. So, and what I've done in the past, you know, through bitter experience, is go too far too soon. You know, we've all got these, again, coming back to the airplanes analogy, where you're doing everything by performance envelopes. You know, you can only do so much. It's the same with humans. You know, we can talk about a money-free future, but don't go blasting, right, we're going to make everything free tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He's lost it. He doesn't have a rational grip on.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of don't like the whole money free. I don't like the name Money Free Party. I think it leads people down the wrong path of thinking, because it's not really about money free, is it? It's not about taking money away. It's about creating a system whereby money no longer serves a function. It just no longer has a purpose. Yeah, I've never liked the name. I've never liked it.
I mean, I'm very, very sensitive to that. And I'm just going outside for a minute. So this is, I don't know if you've seen the bus.
Well, I've seen pictures of it. I've never actually seen the bus.
This is the campaign bus.
Yeah, it's awesome.
This will cost a fucking fortune, by the way. So this is the number plate.
Very good.
How is that reversed to you, or is that the right way around?
No, that's right. That's right.
Okay. How's the future looking? And the website. And this is all IRBE, so Institute of Resource-Based Economics. At the moment, we've got this logo on the side, which is now sort of internationally, I'll say, recognised as the money-free logo, but not money-free party, just money-free New Zealand, money-free France, money-free USA, or whatever.
Okay.
This will, when we get closer to election time, it'll say Vote Richard, and a special website that we're building called coastwise.nz, which is specifically for Greymouth and this particular election. It's not a global money-free thing at all. And then on the back, we've got the big logo.
It looks great.
Yeah.
Great. Who did that for you? That's really nice. That's really nicely done. Who did that for you?
Yeah, no, a really cool outfit called Bad Boy Graphics over in Greymouth, bizarrely. Yeah.
So have you not been able to call upon like-minded souls to give of their time and work for free in order to help you along? Well, I guess you probably have on some occasions and not on others, right?
Yes, some stuff, no. Yeah. Actually, Bad Boy Graphics are giving us quite a break, but yeah. I mean, the materials are expensive, for example. So
yeah.
I've put my cup of tea down. I have to rewind the video to find the tea. Yeah. But yes, so we're very, very conscious of and cautious with using terminology. But I mean, I've got a pocket full of different cards, you know, depending on the conversation. Should I give them an Institute card or a money-free party card or a sticker or a money-free world card? I mean, again, it's the brainwashing. It's not about me. It's about you. You know? Yeah. I liken it to a log jam, you know, in a creek that's all jammed up with logs. Why doesn't your brain work clearly and rationally like it was intended to when you were born? You know, a stream should just run. And if you can have a conversation with that person, you can frequently pick out just one or two logs in that jam, whoosh, and they're away.
Yeah.
And it can take 10 seconds or it can take 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's, but it's, again, it's one of the things that drives me on, especially, forgive me, on the coast, because these people are so crushed. They're so fucking downtrodden and depressed. When you come along with something like this, they are aflame, you know, and that is a fantastic thing to behold, to be part of that, setting people free again, you know, and awakening all that lovely energy and passion and compassion that's been so shut down for so long.
Yeah.
It's a profound experience, and it really drives me along, you know, which I guess brings me back to where we started. You know, the energy comes from the people, not from me. You know, I get it from them, you know, to see people coming alive. It's fantastic to be part of it. Yeah, privilege, actually. Yeah.
Not that I'm likening you to Mother Teresa, but I remember seeing an interview with Mother Teresa a while ago in which she was asked, you know, how is it you live in those conditions and look at all of that suffering year in, year out, you know, how is it you've managed to do that? And she said, no, you don't understand. You know, when I look into the faces of these people, I see it is God staring back at me. You know what I mean? How can, you know, as far as she's concerned, she's living an exalted life. You know what I mean? She feels privileged to
Yes.
be able to do what she's doing. So, you know, it's yeah, again, back to the idea of perspective. You know, it is
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
Richard, it was a pleasure. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you.